The long, simmering shadow war between Israel and Iran erupted into direct, open fire this weekend, marking a terrifying new chapter in the Middle East. What began on Friday as a surprise Israeli assault, codenamed Operation Rising Lion, quickly escalated into a deadly exchange of missile strikes that has left cities on both sides scarred and mourning. Over 3 days, the conflict has spiraled, moving from surgical strikes on military and nuclear infrastructure to brutal attacks that have claimed the lives of civilians, including children, as they slept in their homes. The rules of engagement have been shattered, replaced by a raw and unpredictable cycle of retaliation that has pushed the entire region to the brink of a wider, more devastating war. This recent wave of violence is the most direct confrontation the two nations have ever engaged in, a stark departure from the proxy battles that have defined their animosity for decades. The fighting began with precise Israeli airstrikes targeting key Iranian facilities, including the Natanz nuclear site and military command centers in Tehran. Iran's response was swift and forceful, launching hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones towards Israeli population centers. The skies over Tel Aviv, Jerusalem and Haifa were lit up not by fireworks, but by the fiery streaks of interceptor missiles and the horrifying glow of successful strikes, bringing the war home to ordinary citizens in a way few had ever experienced before. The escalation has drawn in other regional actors, with Yemen's Houthi rebels claiming to have launched their own missiles in support of Iran, further complicating an already volatile situation. International calls for restraint from global leaders and the United Nations have so far been drowned out by the drums of war. The 6th round of US-Iran nuclear talks, which had been scheduled for Sunday in Oman, was abruptly cancelled, extinguishing a fragile flicker of diplomacy. As rescue workers continue to pull victims from the rubble in both countries, the world watches with bated breath, fearing that this is not the end of the exchange, but merely the beginning of something far worse. The initial Israeli operation was reportedly aimed at crippling Iran's nuclear ambitions and striking at the heart of its military leadership. Israel stated it hit over 80 targets in Tehran alone, including the Ministry of Defense and sites connected to Iran's nuclear program. Among the dead in Iran were 9 top nuclear scientists and 4 high-ranking military generals, a significant blow to the regime. However, Iran's retaliatory capacity proved formidable. Despite Israel's advanced multi-layered air defense systems, at least 22 Iranian ballistic missiles have managed to break through, causing death and destruction deep inside Israeli territory and proving that no city is entirely safe from attack. The calm of a weekend evening in Israel was shattered by the piercing shriek of air raid sirens, sending nearly 1 million people scrambling for shelter. In the southern Tel Aviv suburb of Bat Yam, the devastation was absolute. An Iranian missile slammed into a 10-story apartment building, collapsing a section of it into a heap of concrete and twisted metal. The attack killed 6 people, among them a 10-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl. Rescue teams worked tirelessly under floodlights, their faces grim as they searched for the 7 residents still missing. One paramedic at the scene described the chaos, his voice heavy with emotion. "We arrived to find a scene of total horror," he said. People were emerging from the dust, covered in soot and ash, screaming for their loved ones. We just tried to help who we could. The attacks were not confined to one area. In the northern Arab town of Tamra, another missile strike claimed 4 lives, turning a quiet community into a scene of grief. Farther south, in the city of Rehovot, the prestigious Weizmann Institute of Science was hit, causing extensive damage to laboratories but miraculously avoiding fatalities on campus, though 42 people in the city were injured. In Haifa, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed a direct hit on the country's largest oil refinery, sending thick plumes of black smoke into the sky and striking at Israel's economic and energy infrastructure. The message from Tehran was clear: every part of Israel was within reach. For families caught in the crossfire, the experience was terrifying. Sarah, a mother of 3 from Bat Yam, spoke of the moment the missile hit. The whole building shook like it was an earthquake. The windows blew out, and the children were screaming, she recounted, her voice trembling. "We hid in the reinforced room, praying. When we came out, our neighbor's apartment was just gone." These personal stories paint a harrowing picture of the human cost of the conflict, A cost measured not just in casualties, but in the pervasive sense of fear and trauma that now hangs over communities across the country. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site of the Bat Yam attack, his expression stern as he walked through the debris. He vowed that Iran would pay a very heavy price for what he called the premeditated murder of civilians. Standing amidst the destruction, he declared that Israel's resolve would not be broken. For the people of Israel, however, such political declarations offer little comfort. They are left to mourn their dead, tend to their wounded, and live with the constant anxiety that the next siren could signal a missile heading for their own home, their own family. While the world saw clear images of the destruction in Israel, the full extent of the damage inside Iran remains shrouded in uncertainty. Reporting from within the country is heavily restricted, making independent verification nearly impossible for foreign journalists. Official state media has become the primary and often sole source of information. According to reports from Iran's health ministry, the death toll from the Israeli strikes had reached 128 by Saturday, with around 900 people injured. The numbers paint a grim picture, but the stories behind them are difficult to access, leaving a void where personal accounts and unfiltered images should be. What is known is that the Israeli strikes were deep, precise, and devastating. The attacks targeted the very heart of Iran's military and scientific establishment. The IAEA confirmed that the above-ground pilot fuel enrichment plant at Natanz, a cornerstone of Iran's nuclear program, was destroyed. In Tehran, a single attack on a 14-story apartment building reportedly killed 60 people, half of them children, according to an unverified report from state media. Images released by Iranian news agencies show rescue workers digging through rubble with flashlights, searching for survivors in scenes tragically similar to those in Bat Yam. The Israeli military, or IDF, has not concealed its actions, even taking the unusual step of issuing warnings directly to the Iranian people. Using social media platforms, the IDF posted messages in Farsi urging civilians to evacuate any areas near weapons manufacturing facilities for their own safety. This tactic suggests an attempt to separate the Iranian people from their government, yet it does little to mitigate the terror felt by those living near targeted zones. For ordinary Iranians, these warnings create an impossible choice: flee their homes into an uncertain situation, or stay and risk being caught in an airstrike aimed at a nearby military site. Despite the government's tight control on information, some glimpses of public sentiment have emerged. While official channels showed organized protests with crowds chanting against Israel, private conversations revealed a more complex reality. Some Iranians, speaking anonymously to reporters outside the country, expressed a grim satisfaction, hoping the attacks on the regime's leadership might weaken its grip on power. This division highlights the profound internal fractures within Iranian society, where years of economic hardship and political repression have left many citizens deeply resentful of their own government, even as they face an external enemy. As the dust settles from the weekend's attacks, both Israelis and Iranians are left to grapple with a new and frightening reality. The conflict has moved beyond the shadows and into the open, directly impacting the lives of ordinary people who have no say in the strategic calculations of their leaders. In both Tel Aviv and Tehran, families are mourning, hospitals are treating the wounded, and a pervasive anxiety has taken hold. The psychological toll is immense, as the threat of another sudden, deadly attack looms over daily life. Children are afraid to sleep in their beds, and parents are left to wonder how to keep them safe in a world where nowhere feels secure. The leaders of both nations have only doubled down on their aggressive rhetoric. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has warned that his country's responses will become more decisive and severe if Israel's hostile actions continue. Across the border, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz made a chillingly blunt declaration: Tehran is burning. These statements, designed to project strength, leave little room for de-escalation. Every strike now demands a counterstrike, creating a perilous momentum that could easily spiral out of control and pull in other countries, igniting a full-blown regional war that would be catastrophic for all involved. The international community, including the United States, has urged caution, but its influence appears limited. US President Donald Trump has stated his country had nothing to do with the attack, but issued a stark warning to Iran against targeting American interests. Meanwhile, the diplomatic path is crumbling, as evidenced by the cancellation of nuclear talks. Without a forum for dialogue, the risk of miscalculation grows exponentially. A mistaken assessment of the other side's intentions or capabilities could lead to a fatal error, triggering an even greater wave of violence that would make the horrors of this past weekend pale in comparison. Ultimately, the future rests on a knife's edge. If the fighting continues, the cost will be measured in the lives of more civilians, more children in Bat Yam, more families in Tehran. The damage to infrastructure could cripple economies and set back development for a generation. The hope for a stable, peaceful Middle East, already so fragile, would be extinguished. For the ordinary people caught in the middle, the only wish is for the sirens to stop and the rockets to cease. They are the ones who will pay the highest price for a conflict they did not choose, praying that their leaders will find a way back from the brink before it is too late.